Well, good evening, and welcome to this forum for the Stevens Point Area Public School District School Board candidates, sponsored by the League of Women Voters of the Stevens Point area, the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point Student Government Association, the Stevens Point Area Senior High Student Senate, and the Portage County Business Council. My name is Sue Buck, and I'm a member of the League of Women Voters, and I will serve as moderator for this event. The League of Women Voters is a political but nonpartisan organization. The League's primary purpose is to encourage voting by registering voters, providing voter information, and advocating for voting rights. Tonight's event is part of providing voter information through candidates sharing their views of issues of concern to Stevens Point Area Public School District residents. The co-sponsors of this forum, the SPASH Student Senate, the UWSP Student Government Association, and the Portage County Business Council are also nonpartisan organizations with no endorsement of candidates or political parties. Their interest is helping local citizens to be more informed voters. The Stevens Point Area Public School District covers more than 400 square miles, which was once part of the Menominee Nation. It is one of Wisconsin's largest districts. There are 9 elementary schools and 2 junior high schools. There are 2 senior high schools, the Charles F. Fernandez Center and the Stevens Point Area Senior High. The Point of Discovery School is a public charter school for grades 7 to 12 for the 23-24 academic year. And there are 6 specialized schools: 4K program, the Boston School Forest, Online Learning Center, Project Search, Rural Virtual Academy, and Summer School. During the 22-23 academic year, there was a total of 6,968 seat count students and 534 full-time equivalent classroom teachers for PK to 12th grade. Other staff totaled 459 full-time equivalents in roles such as instructional aides, guidance counselors, librarians, and library staff, district and school administrators, and support staff and other support services. The consolidated budget total revenues for fiscal year 2023-2024 for all district funds was $132,512,072, which includes $104,000 of revenue in the Capital Projects Fund. The consolidated budget total expenses for the same period was $138,210,009, including expenses totaling $306,504 in the Capital Project Fund. The Stevens Point Area Public School District has 9 school board members. Members are elected for a 3-year term. Citizens of the Stevens Point Area Public School District 18 years of age or older may run for a board position. The board meets on the second Monday of the month. School board members are compensated for their service at a rate of $3,780 annually. There are 6 candidates running for 3 open seats. The candidates are Miguel Campos, Meg Erler, Robert Larson, Jim Lepak, Judy Ranow, and Will Shader. All candidates were invited to participate in this evening's forum. Joining us this evening are Miguel Campos, Meg Erler, Judy Ranow, and Will Shader. Robert Larson was not able to attend, and Jim Lepak contacted me this afternoon and said he has caught the bug that's going around and he has the flu and didn't think he wanted to contribute to spreading the bug. So he was very sorry he couldn't be here tonight. To provide the most time to hear from the candidates and to provide a fair and equal opportunity to answer questions important to you and this community, I will review the format, time, and terms of this forum. This has also been reviewed with the candidates. Each candidate will first have 1.5 minutes to introduce themselves and make an opening statement. They will then have 1.5 minutes to respond to questions. They will also have 1.5 minutes to make a closing statement, and I will repeat a question if you need me to do that. Candidates will respond first to some questions submitted by the forum sponsors, and then questions from the audience. Questions from the audience must be addressed to all the candidates. If you want to submit a question, please motion to one of the ushers who are in the aisles, who have index cards and pencils, and they will get you that and turn that back into the ushers and get them to our question screeners down here. If you want to, the league reserves the right to review and screen questions for relevance and to avoid duplication. We do have timers, and they are right in front of the table. A green folder will be held up when their time starts. A yellow folder will indicate 30 seconds remain, and the red folder means the time has expired. Candidates may finish their sentence, then please stop so the next candidate may begin their response. Candidates are asked to keep their remarks germane to the questions and fair to the participants. Audience members are requested to respect the candidates' time and responses, and we're also asking you to turn off your sound-making devices. And the moderator reserves the right to interrupt to ensure that these ground rules are observed. The order of response to each question will be rotated. We will alternate which candidate answers the question first. The order of the opening and closing statements will be chosen by random by drawing names out of a bowl. I have already stated participants in tonight's forum are Will Shader, Judy Ranow, Meg Erler, and Miguel Campos. And we will begin with the opening statement, and our first opening statement will be by Judy Ranow.
Good evening. I'm currently on the school board, and I serve as the treasurer and as the chair for the Human Resources Business Services Committee. I've been on the board now 3 terms, and it's been very enjoyable. I plan on keeping going with what I've been doing. I lead strategically. I have that logical, neutral perception that brings a lot of insight into the board, and so I'm able to help with some of those strategic long-term things, which is really part of the value that I bring to the board.
Okay, thank you. Our next candidate will be Will Shader.
Oh, look at that. Convenient. Is this on? Good? Okay. All right. First off, I just want to thank you all for coming out tonight. It means a lot to me that you took time from your busy schedules to come listen and be an informed voter. My name is Will Shader. I'm from Somerset, Wisconsin, which is a small rural town about 3.5 hours west of here towards the Twin Cities. I went to a school district, rural public school district, a lot like Stevens Point. It's almost uncanny how much deja vu it gives me, how similar the culture is here in Stevens Point, although this district's a lot larger than the one I went to. I then went to school here at UWSP, and I graduated with degrees in environmental science and political science. At UWSP, I served as the student body president, vice president, speaker of the Senate, senator, heavily involved in public education initiatives, so I'm very passionate about that issue. When I graduated, my first job out of college was being a substitute teacher, which really opened my eyes to the needs of the district. Teachers feel overwhelmed, burdened, stressed. Students are dealing with mental health issues and increasing concerning behaviors and grades and test scores in the district as well. So I remember what it was like to grow up in a rural public school district, and I really want to be part of the solution to figuring out some solutions to these problems that we're facing. And I really look forward to answering your questions tonight, so thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next person will be Meg Erler.
I have lived in the community since 1989, raised 4 children here. I'm very proud to say that 3 out of the 4 of them are public school teachers. 2 of them are 2nd grade teachers. 1 of them is an English lit teacher at a high school in Milwaukee. I like to think that I influence them by letting them understand that education is the key. It's the key to the future for our kids. It's the key to the future for our families. It's the key to the future for our community. I've been on the board since July of 2014. I was appointed to the seat initially, and then I have been reelected for 3 terms. This would be the 4th full term that I am running for. I believe I have been a positive, organized, supportive, direct, honest, trustworthy, and committed member of our board. I believe there's a lot to be done. I would like to continue to be part of creating solutions for our students, for our staff, for our parents, and for our community. Thank you for all of you being here tonight to listen and learn about us, and I thank the League for their leadership in hosting these forums for the community. It is an incredible public service, and it looks easy, but it takes a lot of work behind the scenes.
Thank you. And Miguel, guess who?
Thanks. Well, first, I'd like to say thank you to the League for hosting tonight's forum, and most importantly, thank you to all of those in the audience and online for attending. I do think it's important for all citizens to know a little about local governance, and this is one avenue for that information, and it's a great avenue for that information. For those of you who don't know me, my full name, I am Miguel Gabriel Campos. I was born in Odessa, Texas. I was raised primarily in the Wausau area. After living there most of my life, I moved to Stevens Point in 2004, and I graduated from UWSP in 2010. From there, I moved on to a fantastic 13-year career in accounting at Berkshire Hathaway Specialty Insurance. I've been part of multiple local startups. I've worked with numerous organizations throughout the community, including the Ignite Young Professionals Group. I've worked with the Salvation Army, Operation Bootstrap, the United Way, and I still serve on the Grants Committee with the Community Foundation of Central Wisconsin. I have 2 children in the district right now for at least 9 more years, and they are a large part of the reason why I am seeking re-election. And parents are one of the largest stakeholders in a school district, and I personally believe they should make up a fair portion of the board. I'm also, forgot to mention my wife too, thank her for all of her patience throughout this process over the past couple of years, and thank you again for your time this evening. I appreciate it.
Thank you. We will now start with the questions, and I'm going to pick one name and then we'll go from there. And our first question will start with Meg Erler. And all of you will answer this question. If you need me to repeat it, let me know. So, Meg, what do you believe is the purpose of public education?
That's a big question. I believe the purpose of education is to provide, well, I'll go right to our mission. Our district's mission is to prepare each student to be successful. I believe that that is the purpose of public education. It's to take each child where they are and help them grow in the directions that they need to grow. Help them learn what they love to do, support them in finding what they're good at doing. It's supporting them in the many ways that our public schools do. We educate our students. We provide a safe place for them throughout the day. We provide caring, supportive staff, our teachers, our bus drivers, our EAs, our food service workers who are there to help them find their passions and make their way in the world. So, and we're open to everyone, and we provide support to everyone.
Thank you. Judy Ranow, if you will answer the question.
So, Meg, you said a lot of what I would say. And I've worked in school districts in a couple different states, K-12 as well as universities. And what I've seen over the years is while the purpose is really to help prepare students to succeed, it is becoming more and more challenging. So as we look at that, we want to make sure that we have robust options for classes. We can't go in and say, you're going to learn reading and math and that's it. You need to find ways to engage them, topics that interest them, and have them find different ways that they can actually engage in it, which means that the teachers, the staff are doing a lot more work. They're having to provide a lot more for the students than just standing up in front of the class teaching. If you think about teaching in the back, right? So you've got your old overhead or your video. That's not what teaching is like nowadays. So the purpose of the schools is still at that basic foundation to prepare the children. How we're doing it is evolving greatly because of everything that's happening around us.
Thank you. Will Shader?
Thank you for the question. I'm incredibly passionate about public education. I have been fighting for and supporting public education since I was in high school. And I think the purpose of public ed is to lift everybody up and give everybody an opportunity to succeed in this world. It's an increasingly complex 21st century that we are forced to navigate here, and equipping students with the skills to navigate these rapid changes that we are seeing is the purpose. Making sure that students, no matter where they come from, are feeling welcomed, feel supported, and feel like they walk out of those doors when they graduate high school with a purpose and feeling supported and feeling like they have a path for success and future. Just recently exiting the public education system, I can tell you that it's the support that I received at my school and here at the university is incredibly important to who I am today. And all of us rely on public education to supply us with a 21st century workforce, to make people better citizens of the world, to make sure that when people run for things like school board or for Senate or for the president, that the voters for those races are educated, informed, and making good choices for their neighbors around them. So that's what I would put that for.
Okay, thank you. And Miguel Campos.
Gosh, this is a hard question to be last for. But everything that they said, but adding on to that is just leveling the playing field. I think public education gives everybody that may not have the opportunity to go to a charter school or a specific school or private school or some fancier school, and I mean that in a good way. It gives everybody the opportunity in the United States to become something. Anybody, anywhere, especially in this school district, we go above and beyond to make sure that we're accommodating to literally everyone. And I think that's huge. That's one of the values, I think, in Stevens Point in general, not just the school district. But we have amazing teachers that help foster dreams, self-worth, and prepare students for their individual chosen path to success, whatever that might look like. And that all comes from teachers and from public education and the accessibility that we give every single student that comes to this community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next question, we will start with Judy. And the question is, do you support the upcoming $14 million recurring operational referendum that will be on the ballot in April? Why or why not?
Yes, I do support the referendum. As we look at where we're at financially, Stevens Point School District is a very fiscally responsible district. And has been. And so the issues that we have with the budget are not due to any, lack of work on the district's part. It really is a funding issue. And historically, because we have been so conservative in our spending, that has actually been a hindrance when it comes to funding for the schools. So without this, we are facing the potential for having to do some hard things, look at some hard choices, reducing teachers, increasing class sizes. Without the referendum, we're going to have to make a hard decision, and we meaning the board and the cabinet. And so I am firmly in support of it.
Okay, thank you. Will Shader.
Yeah, I fully support the referendum on the ballot in April. I've been working pretty closely with a group of people trying to educate the citizenry of the district about the needs of the schools. And since I currently work in the school district, I can tell you just some things that I see every day. Our teachers, I cannot imagine what they would do with larger class sizes or less education aides in the schools. Right now, in the time spent per student is already pretty stretched thin with everything else that teachers have on their plates, and with supporting specific students intentionally. So if those class sizes be increased, if staff was to be cut, it would do irreparable damage to our youth in this area, and therefore all of us. If we're not supporting our youth, if we're not supporting our education system, then we are hurting ourselves 10, 20 years down the road when those youth that we didn't support are now expected to support us, right, as we age and leave the workforce. So, and then also just the after school and extracurricular activities that are currently kind of funded by the school district. Students who are less well off, their families are more disadvantaged, won't be able to access those things. So a lot of where students build their connections and get their character is things like the fine arts, sports, their after-school activities and their circle of friends, their Washington DC trips, et cetera. And if we had to cut funding for those students would be damaged as well.
Thank you. McGill Campos.
I appreciate the inquiry, and I think it's worth noting that I, along with the entire board, voted unanimously to bring forward the referendum to the entire district for consideration. The community has gone through a lot of financial challenges over the past 4 years, and I thought it was extremely important that a financial ask of this magnitude be the decision of all the taxpayers. Every person now has a voice, and my role lately has been to educate, field questions, dispel myths, and advocate for public education and the $14 million ask before us. But the choice is now in the hands of every voting taxpayer, and I support and respect everyone's decision in that regard. You must make the decision that is best for you and your family. Thank you.
Thank you. And Meg.
I strongly support the referendum. In '92, when the state put in cost controls, they froze districts where they were at. Point at the time was a very low spending district, and that's where we were frozen. We've been there forever. I've been on the board for 10 years, and we have faced a structural deficit each year with our district. A main reason for that is we have strived to ensure that we provide compensation and benefits that are at the median for our districts that surround us. We have been the lowest in our area and comparable districts our size in the state forever. In fact, we've been in the bottom 10% of districts often in the time that I've been on the board in terms of our mill rate, in terms of our funding of public schools. We face a $5 million structural deficit this year. That is projected to go to a $7.5 million in the following year, a $10 million, and you just keep going down the road that way if this referendum does not pass. We as a board have focused and asked administration to focus on cost-cutting measures for quite some time. They have done so. We are not going to find that level of cost-cutting in our district, and it is essential that this referendum passes for the benefit of our community, for the benefit of our students, for the benefit of our businesses. Our students are our future, and we need to invest in them.
Thank you. And we'll start with Will with this one. What are this is an audience question. What are your thoughts on increasing educator pay, and how would you go about increasing it?
That's a good question. I think teachers deserve to be paid fairly. Just most teachers show up to school. Let's say your school starts at 7:45. They show up there 6:30 to 7:15 is when they get there. They don't start getting paid till 7:15 for their contract period, and they stay there all day. And then contract ends between 3 and 3:30. But most teachers I know stay in the building until 5 or 5:30. They're working very hard. They support all of our students. I have not met like one teacher that does not work incredibly hard in the district. And right now, in my opinion, quite frankly, they're underpaid. Society as in us does not show our support for them by giving them a competitive wage. They can move to states like Illinois or Minnesota and get paid a lot more than they do here. The reason they stay here is because they love their students and they have a passion for what they do. But we should be making sure that they can afford to buy a home, pay off their student loans, raise a family here in this district. And this district is losing educators to surrounding districts because we are not offering as competitive of a package for their compensation as our surrounding districts. And that's hurting us right now. We have high teacher turnover. That impacts students' education because the more a student bonds with a teacher and the more a teacher bonds their students, the better their educational relationship is. And if we're having new teachers for their classes every year, it means that they just won't be as comfortable and the teacher has to get used to the building and they just won't get the same outcomes. So I think that we should definitely pay them more. As far as mechanisms for doing that, passing the referendum and advocating at the state level.
Thank you. Miguel Campos.
Yes, I absolutely support increased pay. I mean, the current board right now, we did quite a bit with increased pay with the teachers and with educational assistants across the board. And I think if you are opposed to that, you need to look at it from the perspective of every person's wages are going up right now. So you may have a particular opinion on why teachers shouldn't get paid more, but in all reality, everybody's getting paid more. The cost of living is going up. You can't reasonably expect that the cost of living is somehow not going up for teachers. It is. So it's reasonable to request that we keep up at bare minimum with the cost of inflation. I think that's an expectation for every single person in this room as well as every single person in the United States. How to do that? Well, that's why you got nine brains sitting together once a month trying to figure that out. The referendum will definitely be key to that, there's no doubt. Running into a structural deficit, like Meg was talking about, that's definitely going to put a damper on that. Otherwise, we're going to have to retool some stuff in order to make that happen, because we need the educators here. Regardless of programs that may need to be cut if the referendum doesn't pass, we need good quality educators, and good quality educators, while most of them are very passionate and will do it for pennies on the dollar, they can't do that forever. So we do have to keep that in mind, especially from even if you are very fiscally conservative, people still have to get paid. And I think that's, teachers especially, they are the bedrock, along with our students, of a school district. So I absolutely do support increasing educator pay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Meg Erler.
As a board member, I decided that I was going to support our district going to referendum this past March, when our board had to make a decision about what increase we would provide to our teachers and our staff. And our board unanimously made the decision to provide teachers and staff with CPI, with the Consumer Price Index that the state provides us each year. We have done that for several years. It is essential that we continue to do that. It keeps us, again, at that level of pay and benefits with our staff as those in our surrounding district. We have had situations in the past where we've had great teachers come to us and say, you know, I love it here, I'd love to stay here, I can move, you know, to one of our neighboring school districts, I can move to Appleton, I can make $10,000, $12,000 more a year. I mean, that's a tough choice. And it's the bedrock of our schools that we continue to provide our staff with those competitive increases that we are seeing in our area, to recruit them, to retain them, and to support them moving forward. The referendum is the key to do that moving forward with our district.
Thank you. And Judy Renow.
Teaching is hard. If you haven't done it, imagine having to prepare every single day for a lesson with 20 students. And then all of a sudden something happens and you have to modify everything on the fly. And then you have the grading afterwards. It's hard work. So I think we do need to look at how we are paying our teachers. I see individuals that work very long hours. And we think about the time that they might not be working, right? So it's an easy job. You might have a summer off. That's not the case. I think we really need to look at the work that they are doing and making sure that they're being paid fairly. And like Meg said, we are at the median. We try and bump it up when we can. And so the mechanism really is, if the referendum passes, we'll have a little bit more funding to be able to make some of those decisions and work with the cabinet and the Human Resources Department at the school district to be able to provide funding for those positions at a good rate and making sure that we're paying them what they deserve. So I would definitely agree that we need that.
Thank you. And I will start with Miguel Campos this time. And this is another question from the audience. How do you explain the allocation of public money to private charter schools to taxpayers being asked to vote on a referendum to raise their taxes?
One more time.
Okay. How do you explain the allocation of public money to private charter schools to taxpayers being asked to vote on a referendum to raise their taxes?
So, am I understanding, is this a school choice question? Okay, okay. It's a lot of words in that question. A voucher question. I don't really have an answer, to be honest. I haven't contemplated that, truthfully, so I'm going to pass on that question.
All right, thank you. Meg?
Well, as Miguel said, it's not explainable. Most people don't understand our voucher system, what it does. The vouchers don't come from our public school funding. We as a district are provided with an amount of money each year that we can have to use for our schools. A portion of that is state aid. We receive that number, and then we determine, based on what that state aid number is, what we're going to tax the taxpayer to get us to that ceiling in the event that we choose to tax to the ceiling. What we're required to do with vouchers is we are then required to, this past year it was about $3 million, we're required to put that in addition onto the tax levy and tax our residents those $3 million. So you're getting taxed for the public schools, and then you're getting taxed that additional amount for the private schools. We've been trying to get the state legislature to pass a bill to have our tax bills show that, so that the tax bills would show this is what the public school levy is, and this is what the voucher or private school levy is. But we have not been able to get traction from the state legislature. I believe that's a matter of honesty to our taxpayers about what we actually are paying as residents of our districts to private schools versus what we're paying to public schools. But again, the legislature has not been open to passage of that, even to bring a bill forward with respect to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Judy Ranow.
I don't know that I could have said it any better than Meg, honestly. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to Will.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really a state level question. That's state law that requires the district to take that or to tax that from you. So there's not really much the school board or the district admin can do about that. But I am a believer in fiscal responsibility and transparency to the taxpayer. And if you are being taxed $3 million on top of your normal public school levy, that should be shown to you. And I think that the public schools are required to tell you down to the dime what they spend, how they spend it, what they spend it on. Whereas these schools that vouchers go to, what do they have to tell you? So that's an important piece for me.
Okay, thank you. We will start with Meg Erler with this one. What is the role of the school board in supporting the provision by the school district of mental health services for all students?
So for me, the school board is we're a policy setting body. We set policy for the district. We set goals for the districts. We've created a strategic plan. We just revised that for another 5 years last year, where we create broad direction to our superintendent, to our administration, to our principals, to our teachers, to our staff. And that support of students, their mental health support, has been a priority for our board forever. The other thing a board member can do is when administration brings forward recommendations with respect to whether it's additional staffing, whether it's allowing private counselors into our schools, as they are now. We're having private counselors come in. We allow them to use space in our schools. Their children can receive counseling support in our schools. It allows the child to remain in the school and not be gone for half a day. It supports parents who maybe don't have the ability to transport kids or take a half day off work or a day off work. So again, the board is in the position of then taking our votes that show that support for that priority. And I believe that's what our board has been doing.
Okay, thank you. Judy Rana.
Yeah, this has been a topic of conversation for quite a while for the school board. And as we look at that, really, the board members, it's our responsibility to try and understand what the needs are, to ask questions and learn from the staff and the cabinet what's going on, what supports do they need, and looking at their plans and supporting their plans, as Meg said. So we look at kind of that whole package and strategically, what do we need across the entire school district? Where might we need counselors or psychologists or additional special ed EAs, special ed teachers, and look at that whole kind of mental health package, if you will, and determine where we're going to really focus the efforts. And so we work with the district and make those decisions, support their plans and vote on where we want them to go, and then really trust that the cabinet and the staff are going to do what needs to be done because they're doing the hard work. As the board, we really need to understand the issues and really help kind of guide that big picture. It's really up to the staff to do that work every day.
Okay, thank you. Will Shader.
Yeah, I fully agree with what Meg and Judy have said, but just to add on to that, a lot of the resources for mental health come again from the state level. And I view part of the role on the board of that is to be an advocate at the state level to leverage the school board members' position as elected officials and leader in the community to, work with their state legislators to advance those bills in the state legislature that will provide the school districts with more funding for this critical need for our students. That's only getting more critical every year. I see it every day. And a lot of students are in desperate need of support and help. And right now, our school counselors, even our outside counselors, are kind of overwhelmed by the amount of students who need somebody to talk to. And so it's a kind of on the school board to be there at the state level, working with their state legislators, enmeshed in those conversations to make sure that those bills pass and do what they can to get their community to support that as well.
Okay, thank you. And Miguel Campos.
Yeah, I think the role from the school board's standpoint, at least from my perspective, is seeking to understand the issues and asking questions of administration and staff to really understand what the issues are. I've been semi-critical of mental health, 2 years post-COVID. I understood completely during coming out of COVID and during COVID, the mental health, the loneliness, et cetera. I understand that. It's not as clear to me now what the mental health issues are, and I'm not saying that there are not mental health issues. As a board member, I need to better understand what these issues actually are. And then I'm not talking about privacy issues, and just better understanding from a school board standpoint, like what are the issues? Like what are we talking? Are we talking about social media? Are we talking about bullying? Are we talking about race issues? Like what are the actual issues? And I think the public has been also very critical of this. We have earmarked $2 million potentially next year for this, and I've been critical of what does that actually mean? And I think a lot of people are asking, it's a fair question, what are the mental health issues that we're even talking about? Because $2 million is a lot of money. What is it going to do? What are the issues we're talking about? I'm not saying that they're not there, but I want to understand what they are. I mean, if you're telling me that there are issues that are related to things at home, then what can a school board do internally? What can a school district do internally, realistically, if this is if this is a home mental issue thing that's exacerbating the situation? I think that's important for school board members to understand what the actual issues really are. Very in vivid, we need to understand that in order to allocate the money. And you get a lot more buy-in from taxpayers. When you've got a $2 million number out there, it's a lot of money. If we don't understand the specifics of it, I don't blame anybody for saying, well, no, I'm not going to support that. I need details. That just makes sense. But do I support that?
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Next question starts with Judy Ranow. And this is also an audience question. Describe what you have done or what you plan to do to convince the Wisconsin legislature to adequately fund mandated programs.
That's an interesting question, because you really can't get the legislature, make them do anything. And I say this, I've actually served on the Governor's Council for Workforce Investment. I've done some other things at that level, and you cannot make them do anything. Really, it is, as Will said, that advocacy. Attending forums, getting involved where you can, connecting with people on a personal level. Letting people know what is important to us. And I think that's really the big role of the board as well. And I'm looking at G, who on our board is our legislative advocate. And we have somebody who pays attention to that and brings information to the board at the meetings, saying, here's what the legislation is doing, here's the bills that are coming up, and keeping us informed so we know what we can do as a board to help support some of those things.
Okay, thank you. Will Shader.
Yeah, well said. Just again, to reiterate on what I said, it is the job of the board to advocate at the state level for that. When I was the student body president here specifically, I spent, it's probably in Madison at least once a month, and I'm looking at Colin for how much money on gas I spent on that. Working with other working with other student governments and legislators, advocating for issues that affected public education in the EW system. I've done that a lot, and it's one of the things that I actually kind of enjoy doing. I think that one of the things that we could look into doing is leveraging not just our school board, but every school board in the state, because we are all being faced with the same issues. I mean, there are 91 referendums on the ballot this year, school operational referendums. And so clearly the issues that we're facing here with funding and adequately funded mandated programs and mental health are not just our issue. And so further enmeshing ourselves with those other school boards and working together to put pressure on the state legislature to address these issues is going to be really important. And also working with our communities. I mean, there's 57,000 residents in this district, and that's a lot of people that we can hopefully use and advocate with to get our elected officials to do something about this.
Okay, thank you. Miguel Campos.
Yeah, again, like everybody said, there's not a lot on a personal level that I can do as far as on the board level, but at working with different groups, we have, like I said, like Judy said, we have G who does a lot of that for us. Just staying apprised of the issues, I think, is probably one of the biggest things we can do, is just understanding what the issues are and who's controlling those issues. Another thing is we have a very well-balanced board, and I think there's a lot of people that have a lot of certain connections throughout the community with different people in the assembly, different people in the legislature, and it's nice to have that because we're able to step across aisles and have good conversations with individuals. So I think that's a large benefit of our current board that we have. We have that ability to do that. I think that's about the extent of what you can do as a board.
Okay, thank you. And Meg Erler.
So from a broad perspective, our school district, like I believe pretty much all others in the state, are members of the Wisconsin Association of School Boards. We provide annual funding to them. They have a specific lobbying department that works directly to talk to all of the legislative members with respect to those issues that school districts around the state believe need to be heard. On a local basis, I think it's essential that our district continues to invite our legislators into our buildings. We need to be talking to them. When we're facing a budget crisis, a fiscal crisis like we're doing right now, it's essential that Pat Teston and Katrina Shanklin have all the information, have all the understanding of what's happening at our local level so that they can bring those stories. They have that local understanding of how that lack of funding is negatively impacting our community. So it's really upon us to make sure that we are educating our legislators about what's happening in our schools with our kids, with our families, with our community. And they have both been wonderful in terms of being willing to show up whenever we call.
Okay, thank you. The next question will start with Will Shader. And this is, how does a school board member evaluate and utilize input from parents and the community to help with the decision-making process of the board?
Yeah, it's obviously critical. We can teach all we want and put all these lessons in our students' heads, but if it's not supported or understood by the parents at home, then what are we doing? Kind of shouting in the void there. So I think it's incredibly important to be present in the community, to attend events, to attend school events specifically, concerts or different fine arts shows or sports events, to talk to parents and be available and open and be present as your capacity as a school board member, to listen and be available to people. You can't really expect people to come to you as an elected representative. People are busy, they have lives, right? So it's a lot easier if you go to where the people are and see what they want. And then take that feedback and evaluate it when you take it, also feedback from our experts in the administration and our educators, and evaluate what is best for you as a representative of the voters and the taxpayers of the district for our kids.
Okay, thank you. Miguel Campos.
I think Will is right about being visible is what I would say, is being out in the community. When I first ran, that was one of the big things I ran on, was being visible in the community. I think that's extremely important. You've got a district that's 400 square miles, 7,000 students, and right now we're in a financial crisis. And I think it's important to be visible so people understand how important a school district is to the community. You need to be out there. There's not a lot of people that come to school board meetings, and I get it, people are extremely busy, but I think school board members, administration, owe it to the community to be around, be visible, so that way they have the opportunity to talk to you, to ask questions. Ever since the referendum came, I can tell you that I've been reached out by a lot of people, and most of it is because of the fact that I'm involved in a lot of things, and people recognize me, they see me, and they feel comfortable being able to come up and ask questions. That information is extremely valuable because that's real-time data. That's not distilled data, that's real-time data that I can come back and discuss with board members, that can be given to administration, and that stuff is actionable immediately. I think that's extremely important.
Okay, thank you. And Meg Erler.
I would agree with what everyone has said about the visibility, about, if I get an email, people get an email back from me, they also get my phone number. I'm more than happy to talk to anybody who's got a question. I think that's a responsibility of a board member to be available for that. Our district also does do a school perception survey each year with our parents. We take the results seriously about that. Again, from a board perspective, it's about us supporting administration in addressing maybe some of those areas that there are room for improvement. And again, it's the board being supportive of that. The other thing that it's important to do is to provide those funding and support for the communication tools that are going to help families connect more easily with our district. We can all talk back and forth about the pros and cons of the internet, but the ability of parents to have that on-time information about what's going on with their kids in school has been incredibly helpful for parents. We also have an amazing district app that parents can access, and it's can be a two-way communication street. My favorite is we have an app now that parents can know exactly the minute that the bus is going to show up at the stop for their child. I remember back in the day, my kids in the middle of winter standing outside for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, waiting for that bus. And so, again, providing those tools to parents, allowing for that is something that the board can support.
Thank you. And Judy Ranow.
So I think it's been said multiple times, it's really listening and trying to understand. So how do we provide venues for the public to ask questions, to provide their input? Part of it is through the emails, it's through those conversations, and the board is one small piece. We're elected officials, we listen to the information, and then we use that when we're looking at the big picture, when we're looking at the decisions that we have to make. And a lot of times, for example, I will get emails on an issue and it'll be 50-50, half are for, half are against. I've got to take that information and as a board member weigh that along with everything else. It's a data point in time to help us make decisions. The bigger thing when you think about communication is how do we also help get communication to the right places. Sometimes the school board isn't the member is not the right person and they can't solve the issue. Because as a school board member, we may not have those tools or the connections to fix whatever the issue is. So part of what our role is in that input is to make sure that the inquiries or concerns get to the right place within the district so they can actually be addressed. So instead of just being able to vent or feel like they're venting, how can we help get some action to some of those things? So that's another role that the board members play.
Okay, thank you. We'll start with Miguel this time. And this is another audience question. What is the most efficient way to support teachers and students?
Well, that's a good question. I think first and foremost is from a teacher's perspective is listening to teachers. I know a couple board meetings ago I'd brought up to administration the idea of, the principals having a forum with an open forum with teachers on an ongoing basis to be able to communicate certain things with the principals for like cost saving things, issues that they're dealing with, and being able to bring that all the way up to the board so that we can actually address some of these issues and they can be anonymous things. Not everybody feels comfortable addressing things that may be perceived as negative. So being able to be a little bit more open with teachers and being able to give them different avenues to be able to channel some of their frustrations is something that I think as a board member, I'd like to open up those channels with them. As far as supporting students, it's supporting teachers. The teachers are the one that are supporting the students, so the better we can support the teachers, the better they're going to be able to support the students. I mean, there's nothing that I do that actually supports directly the students. It's supporting the teachers that then support the students. So if you support the teachers, they're going to be able to have the tools to support the students.
Okay, thank you. Meg Erler.
So our classrooms are very, very busy places. We have also seen as a district, and we're not unique, we have seen more and more students struggling. Frankly, more and more students acting out. More and more students providing distractions within the classroom. What our board did I think it's about a year and a half ago, is we supported a proposal brought forward by our administration to provide, and it was a cost revenue neutral. We took, the administration moved some things around, and we created an interventionist position within each of our schools. It's a pilot project right now, and our board will be finding out how it's going. But the focus of that project is to really be able to support that teacher in the classroom. Where a distraction is happening, it allows that interventionist to either step in and support that classroom while the teacher is working things through with the student, or for the interventionist to work with the student and allow that classroom teaching to happen. For me right now, the most efficient, effective way we can support teachers is to find smart ways to help them teach and to allow them to focus on that teaching and to allow us as a community, school community, to support those needs of students that may be getting in the way of both their learning and the learning of the other children within the classroom.
Thank you. Judy, right now.
So really, it's about how do we support the teachers, as Meg said, teach. We need to be able to provide resources, the teaching resources, the educational assistance supports, anything that we can do that helps them be more effective on their jobs. Even some of the systems, when we look at some of the technology is fun and it can be overwhelming. So how do we look at different technologies and maximize those instead of just rolling out a new teaching technology and saying, here's a fun new one that tracks all your tests, right? So how do we make sure that we maximize that and we utilize those in the right way? So we're selecting the right tools. We are providing educators plenty of time for professional development so they become comfortable with those tools. We listen to what they need and really try to address the root cause of the issues. And thinking about students, how can we make things more effective? Part of that's communication, making sure that they understand the supports they have available to them and their parents. So how do we make sure that parents know what's available to students? And we've actually had some conversations around this in some of our committee meetings, extracurricular activities. Do all students know that they are able to participate even though they may not be able to fully fund that experience? How do we make sure that that information gets to the students and the parents? We may have students that come in halfway through the year and don't know or understand that. So a big part is making everything accessible and trying to find ways to support those systems.
Thank you. And Will Shader.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I'm a big fan of letting teachers teach. So I think that the more things we can take off their plate, the better. I remember when I was in school, those hours seemed to crawl by, but I have never had a day fly by faster than when I have been teaching. So I get there at 7, and then you look at your clock, like, wow, it's 3. So those teachers need as much support outside of the classroom as they can, so that when they are in the classroom, they are spending those 45 minutes teaching and making sure that those students are, absorbing something from the lesson and hopefully walking away at the end of the year with new information in their heads. So big fan of that. And then also when it comes to supporting students, it really, like everybody else said, it really is supporting the teachers. Nobody but maybe their parents understands students better than their teachers. They spend the most time with them, days, 5 days a week, 10 months a year with those students. So they really understand their needs. So when it's coming to what does our student body need, defer to the educators, defer to what they see, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you. And this is the last question before we go into the closing statements, and we'll start with Meg on this one. What is the role of the board in responding to a request to ban certain books in the school district?
Well, so the role of the board is to follow the procedure that our district has laid out with respect to that, and we have one. We are sort of the area of last kind of appeal. We, as a district, if a request comes from a parent that they feel that they would prefer not to have their child have access to certain materials, our schools honor those requests. They work with the parents to ensure that the books, et cetera, that those children are being allowed to check out of libraries, being able to access in the classroom, are those that the parents are supportive of. We do that with any parent that reaches out to us and that has that request. I can tell you I've been on the board for now almost 10 years. We have never had this issue come to the board. And I believe that's because the system that we have in place is working. Our schools are recognizing that parents are the first teachers of their children and that they have the right and the responsibility to make the determinations about what reading materials their students are accessing. And I believe that it's the school district and the school board's responsibility to honor those requests.
Okay, thank you. Judy.
So really, the role of the board is to follow, as Meg said. I'm kind of not happy about following you right now, just so you know.
We've been working together too long.
I know. It really is about following that process. And this is an interesting one for me because my sister actually is a director for a library in Minnesota. So we have conversations around this all the time. The difference between your public libraries and your school libraries. And really it comes down to, as Meg said, what is coming out of legislature? Where are those banned books? And that list of the banned books coming from, what's the purpose, why is that? And really, for a school library, it is about following those policies and procedures and precedents, whether the request is coming from a parent or from another organization that's looking at school curriculum as a whole.
Okay, thank you. Will Schaefer?
Yeah, I agree with Megan, Judy. I'd also just say that it's full rights of parents to control what their student reads and what they have access to, but it's not their right to control what other parents' children have access to. So that's kind of my position on it. I would never really support pulling a book completely, but limiting a certain student's access to it. If the parent wants that, then that is the responsibility of the school district to make sure that those parents' requests are followed.
Okay, thank you. And Miguel?
Yep, obviously following current rules, regulations, legislation, et cetera. I'm not going to ban books. I think we do have to have a level of transparency. I mean, I think there needs to be a level of common sense. I think most people in society right now are aware of certain things that certain people that trigger people. Talk about it all the time. I think there needs to be transparency and there needs to be common sense that's exercised. I'm not going to pull up, just because I don't want my kid reading something doesn't mean that you aren't in full advocate for reading that particular literature, and that's fine. But I think we all need to honor that people come from different walks of life, and we need to deal with that. And it really just comes down to transparency and yes, common sense. It may not be common all the time, but I think that's why we have 9 board members to produce some common sense among us all. That's all that really needs to be said.
Okay, thank you. We will now move into the closing statements, which is an opportunity for the candidates to comment on topics not covered in the questions. The order of the closing statements will be chosen by random drawing once again, and each will have a minute and a half to present a closing statement. And so our first closing statement will be by Miguel Campos.
All right. Well, thank you again, everyone, for coming out this evening. I appreciate your presence here. I was lucky enough to be able to serve on the board this past year, and we got a lot done together. We were able to increase teacher pay, increase the amount of EA assistance, seek out some budget reduction savings, agree that a referendum needed to be brought forth, and learn and grow together as a mostly new board. I think the best is yet to come for our district, and I hope to be a part of helping ensure that that happens. If reelected, I will continue my ongoing advocacy for a comprehensive K-12 financial literacy curriculum. I think that's extremely important. I will continue to stress the importance of STEM and STEAM education. And lastly, I will continue to support and encourage the growth of our trade-based learning systems at younger and younger grade levels. Thank you all.
Thank you. And the next one is Judy Rano.
Well, thank you. It has always been my position that I want to serve on the board as long as I'm effective, and I was encouraged to run. There are those that actually told me that they would prefer if I would run because I was effective. I may be one of the quieter board members. I do listen, and I am very strategic again about that. So really for me, it's about that big picture. It's about listening to the viewpoints. As Miguel has said, we've got 9 board members, and there's a reason for that. We may not all have the same thoughts, ideas, and experiences, but when we come together, it is a much stronger board. And we're able to have those discussions, even if we may not agree, very respectfully, and learn from each other. And really, at the end of the day, it's about what we can do for the betterment of the board, for the betterment of the school district, and for the students. It really is about education being a critical, vital piece of our community. If that breaks down, our community suffers for it. This is the next generation, so how are we going to support it and uphold it? So if I'm reelected, I will continue doing what I'm doing, listening, making decisions that are for the betterment of education in the district and to that long-term eye of how does this impact our community. So, thank you.
Thank you. Will Shader.
Thank you. Once again, thank you to the league for putting this on, and thank you to all of you for, again, taking time out of your busy schedules to come and listen to us tonight. It means a lot to me. Everything I do that I care about is focused on public education. It's a huge issue for me. It has been forever, as long as I can remember. And I hope to bring a bright, young voice to the school board with new ideas and new directions that we can take some of the issues we're facing. Somebody who remembers what it was like to grow up in a rural public school district, but also somebody who knows what it's like to teach at this district right now. I hope to be able to advocate for students of, more marginalized backgrounds, students who need more support than perhaps our average student. And I hope to be able to bring fresh perspectives to the school board if elected in April. So thank you all for considering that. If you would like to talk after, more than happy to do that. My phone number is on my business card, so if you want to blow up my phone, you can do that. And I appreciate you taking time again.
Thank you. And Meg Erler.
I believe our schools, our public schools, are the future for our community. A number of years back, probably 7 or 8, we did an informal kind of study with our alumni, and we found about 50% reporting that they had stayed in our community post-graduation. They were at university, they were at MSTC, they were working a family farm, they were in the military. They were working in a local business. They were someone who didn't know what they wanted to do, and they were here. We also found that within about 10 years, another 15 to 20% of our graduates came back. They'd been out in the world. They were thinking of having a family. They knew Point was a great place to be. Their family was here, and they came back and became part of our community. We've been touring our businesses that support and are part of our apprentice program in our school district. And they are employing our students, and they will tell us the majority of their employees are our students. I have been privileged. I have truly enjoyed being a part of creating that future for our community and the district. I am a tireless advocate for public education. I believe that I'm open-minded. I believe that I do my homework, and I ask for your vote if I've convinced you to vote for me tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you to the candidates for the time and energy they have invested in running to serve on the Stevens Point Area District School Board and for participating in this forum. Feel free to stay and talk with your constituents out in the lobby, because at 7:30 we have another forum in this room. On the April 2nd ballot, Portage County voters will also be voting for several other offices, including the presidential preference primary, the Stevens Point City Alders, the Portage County Board of Supervisors, the Stevens Point Plover Joint Municipal Judge, and the Stevens Point Area School District referendum. Also on the ballot are 2 statewide ballot measures. One prohibits any level of government in the state from applying or accepting non-governmental funds or equipment for election administration. The other provides that only election officials designated by law may administer elections. The League of Women Voters of Wisconsin has a candidate guide which may be found at vote411.org, and myvote.wi.gov also provides information about the April 2nd elections and the voting process. League contact information, including our website, email, and mailing address, is available at the League table out front. And I also need to note that the Pointers Voter Coalition is registering people to vote, and they have a table out in the lobby, so if you're not registered to vote, they are there to help you to do that. This concludes the forum for the Stevens Point Area School District School Board candidates. Thank you, candidates and audience, for your participation and attention. We also wish to thank Casey Pishak, who's in the back, and John Quirk of the City of Stevens Point, who taped the forum, and will replay the forums on the city site on stevenspoint.com/YouTube, as well as on the local access channel. Along with tonight's forum, the Stevens Point City Alders and the 3 County Board District Supervisors forums will also be aired. These broadcasts are an appreciated service to area citizens. And I need to mention, we kept track of that, and we've had people, 450 to 500 people, watching these forums after they've been aired. Thank you to the league members and the UWSP Student Government Association, the members of the Portage County Business Council, and the SPASH Student Senate, who volunteered in various roles this evening to make the forum possible. We couldn't do it without all of them. And we thank the staff of the UWSP Dreyfus Center for their assistance and for the use of this theater. And I also need to mention that Thursday night at the Lincoln Center, we are having 3 forums for our county board supervisors. There are 14 contested races out of the 25 seats. We couldn't do all 28 people at once, so we have broken up the forums into 3 segments, and we will be doing that Thursday night at the Lincoln Center. The League believes that when you vote, you are participating in one of the most basic and important responsibilities you have as a citizen. When you vote, you are empowering your political voice. So please remember to vote on April 2nd. Your vote does count. And now let us show our appreciation to the candidates, and have a good evening.